everyone, welcome back to Shutter Magazine. I'm Dustin Lucas, and today I'm going to be talking to you about culling and sorting your files. So this is part 3 of my 7-part series, How to Step Up Your Lightroom Game. Let's jump right in. So when it comes to culling, like many of us, we like to put our headphones on, maybe put some music on, dark room, isolate yourself, because you're going to be spending hours going through thousands of photos on a wedding, right? So what it really comes down to is efficiency, right? Are you able to go through 4,500 images, 3,000 images? Is that taking you 4 or 6 hours to go through 3 to 4,000 images, or is it taking you 2 to 3 hours? Of course, many of us have been using Photo Mechanic and other very fast um, culling options for you, right? You want to plug your RAWs in, jump right into culling, uses JPEG previews. It's a great program. Definitely not here to say that Lightroom is the next best thing, right? But there's a way to use Lightroom fast, prepping files, things like that. But hotkeys, different ways to choose, your time and spending to cull images or not. It comes down to, how much time you want to spend. So prepping your files first, then working in Lightroom is always my motto when it comes to culling. But let's jump into the differences and how to use library module. We want to talk about how to get familiar with that, different view modes, how to apply the right attributes, how to use features in Lightroom maybe you weren't aware of, like auto advance. Like you apply an attribute to an image and Lightroom automatically goes to the next image, right? Caps lock, super simple stuff. But not everyone knows it. So tips are going to be important so that way you can cull fast and keep it simple. So let's jump into the library module and dig in. All right, so let's jump into the library module. As you'll see right here, we're already using library, but we want to be in grid mode. So striking the G key immediately puts us into grid mode where we can see all of our images at kind of like a 40,000 foot view, right? So why is this important to show, this for selecting images? Well, library, of course, is going to be your fastest module to select in. By double clicking an image, you can immediately kind of cycle through these. So the previews that build here, the standard previews, everything is much simpler than using develop mode and trying to select through, right? So it's very important that we're using the library module for selecting. You want to keep things fast, right? So when it comes to selecting, how you view your images are very important, right? So we have all these different viewing options down here that we can click on: survey, loop mode, all this kind of stuff. So double clicking on an image immediately puts us into loop mode, but now we have all this other crap, around the image. So if you hold shift and strike the tab key, boom, that removes everything. If you want to clear absolutely everything out, right? This is our toolbar, so clicking the T key gets rid of that. So again, if you want to hide or conceal or reveal your panels, shift tab brings them back, shift tab takes them away. So jumping into the view mode, I love using loop mode more specifically to choose one image at a time as I'm going through these images. So it becomes very important what each what each cell looks like, right? As I'm looking here, this is one specific cell of my grid. So if I want to kind of break down what I want to see here, I can do that by hitting Command J, and I can start changing all the different things that I see in my grid view, right? So if I want to break down extras and things like that, I can turn off index number. Let me zoom in so we can kind of see, hitting the plus key to do that, plus and minus to increase my cell size. But in jumping into the grid view size, I can show compact cells, expanded cells, all this kind of stuff to change what I'm viewing here in my grid mode. So, breaking all this kind of down, we can choose for it to show flags or not. I mean, of course, there's nothing applied. Our badges, if you want the badges to go away, if those are kind of annoying you in the bottom right corner, thumbnail badges are pretty simple to get rid of. Index number, which is just your grid view number, so it's not specific to your file name, all that kind of stuff. So you can get rid of a lot of things and really change things up. So if you want to have just the file name, um, whatever you want to have broken down here, for your grid view. Now loop view, You can break down to what information you want to be able to see. So if you want to see camera information, exposure, all that kind of stuff, you can certainly have that. You can do resolution, file name, all that kind of stuff as well. I like to have camera information. Kind of helps me as I'm going through images and things like that, just to kind of give me different options as I'm going through. Um, Pretty simple and set up. So that's the library view options. Of course, if you hit the J key um, when we're in grid view, it'll cycle between different views for you as well. Kind of a quick, cool feature when working in grid mode. So dropping the panels, camera info, all that stuff is really important to know. Just real quick, right? So if I'm ready to select my images, I want to really be able to block everything out. And that's why I hit the L key twice to go to lights out mode. So what this does is it, as you can see, blacks out the entire screen to where I can really just focus and select on images. That becomes super important for my focus, no pun intended, but as I'm going through selection and choosing images quite fast that I want to make sure in focus or not. Um, that becomes very important through this process. So lights out mode, hit the L key twice, hit it one more time to get out, shift and tab to make those panels go away and come back. Those are the basics of library module, what become essential for getting me prepped and ready to select. Let's move into applying the right attributes and see how different workflows for selecting images can help save some time, but also might overcomplicate the process too, right? All right, so applying the right attributes are going to be a very important part of my workflow, right? How do I want to filter to these images? Because when I'm done, I'm going to choose the metadata filters in library, and I want to make sure I'm choosing the right filters to see my images. So during this process, it's going to be very important for us to be working in lights out mode, removing the panels as we talked about, but also being able to zoom in one to one, right? So as you can see, it's loading for each image, not all of them, but any of them that aren't built already, my one-to-one previews, it's going to require it to be built on demand and then become sharper. So it's something as you want to make sure this image isn't necessarily out of focus, but as soon as it clicks in place and that focus comes into play, it's going to be important that we build those ahead of time, right? So this becomes part of the prepping. You want to make sure in library mode as we're selecting all the images, if you forgot to build one-to-one previews, you can build them right here just by choosing build one-to-ones, and they're going to take a little while, right? So as it's going through and building those, I might want to walk away and come back. I'm going to stop that for now. So just keep that in mind. Very important to build one-to-one previews when you import, but in using selection, you want to be able to move through these images, right? Because zooming at all the way out isn't going to give you focus, right? You're not going to know if that's really in focus or not. So you want to be able to zoom in, and especially with your panels gone, very important. So as we're going through here, now I can start to choose options. As I'm hitting the right arrow to go to each image, it's kind of requiring me to, apply an attribute. Like for instance, if I want to apply a flag, I hit the P key, right? Flag as pick. But the image stays, right? It's not doing anything. Then I have to hit the right arrow and then go to the next image and then go to the next image. So all this kind of like using both your hands, toggling between images becomes really important with how you're set up. You can hit the space bar. That's how I'm doing that, by the way, just to give you a little more insight into the workflow, because it's really important. If you hit space bar, it might only go to fill, right? So if you're here, you hit the space bar, it's going to go to one-to-one. If you're here and you hit fill, it's going to let you toggle between fill and one-to-one. If you click on one-to-one, it's going to toggle between that and fill. So you want to make sure as you're toggling, one-to-one is set up. You can choose different views as well. If you want to view, not one-to-one, but one-to-two, all that kind of stuff. So you can definitely set that up before you get going. But moving back into selection, it becomes very important for these details. I want to be able to zoom in. So one-to-one, I can just click on the screen, or I can hit the space bar, all the same, click around, do everything I need to. I can stay in one-to-one and just hit the right arrow, of course, and that will take me through these images. Hit the space bar to zoom back out. Remember, we're looking at composition and we're zooming in. So spacebar in and out, composition. So let's get back to the task at hand, attributes. So you have a P key, you have the U key to remove that flag, and the X key to apply a rejected flag. So P, U, X, all the same stuff, right? So I can unflag this, it goes back to remove. Now what becomes very important is, as I'm choosing to pick images, am I choosing keepers? Am I choosing ones that absolutely won't be delivered? Am I choosing ones that will be delivered but won't be in the IPS? Am I choosing the IPS images? I mean, there's a lot of things going through your head. So you definitely want to simplify this first round of picking, or as you're choosing images, it's really simple to kind of choose images you want to that you want to keep. So you can you know, just hit the P key and make sure you turn caps lock on, right? So if I hit the P key, it's automatically going to go to the next image. Well, if I don't want to choose this image, I have to hit the right arrow to go to it, or I can just hit the X key. So I can literally just choose pick, 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 zoom into this one. Nah, maybe I don't like that one. I'm going to hit the X key. And as you see here, let's get out of this. It's already choosing flags, remove flags, and things like that for me here. So as you can see, it's doing, I'm picking it or I'm removing it from each of my selections here. So that's auto advance. It works well if you're choosing two attributes to toggle. Now, keep in mind, if you have caps lock on and you use a toggle key like the um, forward slash or the back, it's the key on your keyboard to the left of the number 1 key. If you hit that, that will toggle between pick or not. So that'll just add the pick key. Now it doesn't work, right? Unless you turn auto advance off. So you got to keep that in mind. If you want to remove the flag, choose the flag as a pick. But what that's going to do is it's going to add a flag or unflag it. So that only works if you're not doing the auto advance feature. So it's definitely important as you're choosing between different ways to do attributes. I mean, personally, I like to use the command up and down arrows. So if I have caps lock on, it becomes very simple for I want to pick this image. I'm holding command up arrow, pick, up arrow, pick, up arrow, 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 all this kind of stuff, right? As I'm going through these images, and choosing maybe decrease, increase, decrease, decrease, as I'm going through these different images. So um, as you can see here, it's doing decrease flag, increase flag. So it's starting out at neutral, unflagged, and it's either putting a remove flag or a pick flag, but it's automatically advancing that per image. Now it becomes very important, as you get through these duplicates, these are different lighting and things like that. The composition's changing enough. I want to have a few different options, but a silhouette versus turning the flash on and jumping around, I might want to just like unflag this image. Make sure that's picked, that's picked, that's picked. Maybe I'd go back. I can do in my left arrow to go back and decrease that one. Um, Now, one thing you have to keep in mind is if you increase, it's going to add a flag. But if you decrease, it's going to go back to neutral. So you'd have to hit it twice, right? All right, so a very popular way to select with flags would be to just choose the deliverable images, right? Using the P key. So imagine I don't have anything rejected or anything like that, of course, and I was just choosing the P key for images that I wanted to deliver. Well, after I'm done with my selection, I can then go up to the library module and choose refine photos. So what this does is this allows me to um, immediately unmark all photos that are marked, and it will reject all of the unmarked images. So what does this mean? Everything with the flag goes unflagged. Everything unflagged becomes rejected. So if I do that, it's automatically just going to reject all of those images I didn't mark. So if you're just doing a single flag system, maybe with or without the auto advance option, but you're just choosing images quite quickly with the P key that you want to keep, and then you're using the right arrow just to kind of cycle between images, right? So if I'm choosing pick, 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 and you can go with the right arrow. You can do the same thing with auto advance on. So you're using the right arrow when you're not clicking a key, but pick, 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 arrow, 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 looking for the images you want to keep. You can do all of that quite quickly. But it's going to be very important as you're going through that. As you see, it marks all those other photos automatically as rejected. So that's flags in a nutshell. You can select all of them and hit the U key to unflag everything. So jumping into color labels, it's really simple. When you want to use color labels, it's 6, 7, 8, 9. That's red, yellow, green, and blue. 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's jump into here. Let me pull up some of those watch images here. So 6 key, 7 key, 8, 9. If you want to right click, go to color label and mark purple, you can. It's a manual one. What I find cool about the color labels is that you can customize these. So if you go up to metadata, color label set, you can create your own labels. So if you click on the edit, my labels, I like to do samples, retouching, deluxe, premium, signature. That's pretty common for Evolve, but you can create your own label set, review status, things like that. Um, you can do bridge default, which works really well. So if you're selecting in bridge, I don't know if anybody is, but you have those options there. Lightroom's default for the color labels labeled as such. All you have to do is just come in here and type in whatever you want. So if I wanted this to be samples, if I wanted that to be blog, whatever, um, I can then go down here and do save current as a preset. It's really simple to do. And then if you want to toggle between them, the one thing you want to keep in mind, right? So if I have my labels option on here, if I choose to hit the 9 key, that's called blue. If I change my color label set to my labels, blue is really non-existent altogether. See how it kind of disappeared? I don't know if you noticed that. Let me go back in and show you that one more time. Metadata, color label set, Lightroom. You see the blue labels came back because blue is blue. But if I change it mid, or if I have a different label set in the catalog, those are going to disappear. So keep that in mind. It just has a little label button down there, but these aren't really blue anymore. Now they're premium, right? So any images that are right, go to premium, all those different labels apply across the board. So where's my blue label at? Well, if I hit the 9 key, then it goes back to retouching. Then if I toggle this back, color label set back to Lightroom default, the problem with that is I don't have any blue, I don't have any color labels. So when I hit the 9 key, it goes back to showing actually blue. So keep that in mind when you do custom color label sets. You're just going to get the label mark down here. You're no longer going to get the color label because it changes when you do the custom color label set. So yeah. So moving on from color labels, which are pretty standard, they're star ratings, right? 1 through 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Um, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Of course, if I want to go back over and unrate any, I can. I can hit the 0 key. That's pretty simple. I like to do star ratings, specifically for 3 stars would be something I deliver to the client, but or have them, yeah, 3-star would be something I deliver to the client, but a um, 4-star would be something I'd actually show during the IPS. So, toggling between 2 images, when you have same composition, these are quite different. I might actually just unselect an image like this because the rock is more in focus there. But of course, 5-star. I like that shot. It's brighter. I'd probably 3-star it, but it's not something I would show during the during my IPS to just show that one ring shot there that I really like. So 3, 5-star, that's a kind of delineation between star ratings. It's pretty straightforward how those work, but it all becomes how you're delivering these images to your client, right? So if you're giving them a huge, giving them a large preview of images of digital negatives or digital preview, and you're posting thousands of photos online, that's perfectly fine to do. But if you're sitting through a slideshow, it becomes very important to you know, eliminate out all of the non-essential images or the best of the best of the best. You want them to sit through 800 images of a slideshow and they're not taking 10 minutes to get to the first look. They're going to get antsy. They're going to be wondering where those images are at, why they're looking at opening GIFs and getting ready and makeup photos for 10 minutes. You want to move through those parts of the day and tell the story. All right, so we can jump into some tips for culling after we've gone through the library module and using the right attributes. When it comes to culling, I like to start simple. Let's keep it super objective. So tip number 1 is objective culling. You don't want anything that's soft focus. So what I mean by that is we jump in here to lights out mode and let's just source right through the images as we want, right? So this image here is certainly softer than this one, right? So it's very simple for me to not select this image, not select that one. Now we came back into focus, and you can see that difference between the details here as we can zoom in, details on the rock versus in that image. Moving into the next scene, right, we're back focused, right? Back focus, back focus, back focus, back focused. None of those images look right. So we want to make sure as we're choosing these, we're choosing the sharpest ones. So we're running through these, having the same problem, right? So out of focus, in focus, out of focus. See that difference between back and forth? Same way there. So as we're jumping between these images, you can see all of these out of focus. And that happens with the macro lens, right? You're moving around, you're trying to get it in focus. You want to make sure everything is tack sharp. So we're moving through. All of these images are too soft. That one's pretty close, but probably want something to be a little bit sharper than that as we zoom in here. Boom, that was much sharper. Same kind of thing between these, right? So a little bit sharper. As we zoom in, just kind of making sure. That one's going to load our one-to-one. You can kind of see that difference. Really soft, things like that. So as we're running through this as well, we want to get that symbol in focus, stuff like that. So that's the quick tip for objective culling. Is it soft focused? You want to jump down into expressions. That becomes really important for the bride as she's getting ready. Let's see here. Let's go through a couple of those images. We want to make sure expression is right. Go back up here. Let's see. What scene do we want to select through? Probably some close-up of the bride would be good. Making sure get some singular shots of some of her expression to kind of go through those objective parts of the selection to make sure we're choosing flattering shots of the bride, of course. Let's find putting on the earrings. Perfect. So as we're running through here, looking for differences. So selection, smiling, smiling, a little bit different. Everyone has their own kind of take. This is something that I probably wouldn't put in the best of the best. It's kind of a mid expression. These two, between the two of them with the tongue between the teeth, there's all those like different things you can nitpick about. But as I'm going through these images, I mean, I'm not going to put an image like this in the final selection. Just doesn't make sense unless that's like a smirk or kind of her expression. Um, in going through these images. But there's that, the look from the groom becomes really important. Kind of the difference between these two, editing or not. she's smiling here, this is kind of an awkward face, right? So she's in the foreground. So this becomes really important to me, right? Like, yes, both of these are really good for him, but it's that difference between her smiling. This is a little less awkward for me than kind of closing the mouth here and being mid-expression. So those kind of secondary things become really important. This is a nice shot as well. It starts to crop into his head. Eyes are closed on both of them. Pretty obvious there. I'm not going to choose that. So it's just getting super objective. It's really looking at in focus. Okay, it's in focus. Great. What are their eyes doing? What's the expression? Is it flattering? As I'm going through these images. So you want to make sure, as we're kind of going through these two, I like this expression on her more than I like this one. I mean, it's mouth's kind of open. I mean, this is where it gets a little subjective for you. So you definitely want to, and kind of going through that section. But that's just kind of giving you, kind of what's in the mindset of like your 3 objective selections: soft focus, eyes closed, flattering expression. Now, when you're going through, multiple images and you have duplicates, what's an image you want to keep out of a scene like that, right? Do you need to keep all of them? Are you shooting through a moment there, when she's getting ready? So when you're going through these images, you want to make sure, like, these 2 images are pretty similar other than this little bit of a flare that's going on. So I don't necessarily need to have both. So I probably would, in the softness, 3-star that one and kind of moving through in images that I don't necessarily need to have all of these in my, kind of difference between, I like this better than that. So I'm going to go ahead and 3-star that to get it out of my final. Smiling. That one's pretty good. But it's that subtleness, right? Do we want to show that and that one? But it's a good combination of all of those expressions as we're going through. So same way in choosing images here. The smiling, the different pose. These are pretty much the same shot, right? So in zooming in, I'd want to make sure which expression is better. I don't think that one is. That one's a little bit softer, so I'm probably just going to go ahead and unstar that altogether and get that out through my culling process. But that's where I'm kind of like, I'm looking at these duplicates and I'm making sure, like, where's the subtlety? These are really similar. Again, it's going to be sharp focused expression, things like that. There to there. As it's loading my 1-to-1. Preview to make sure it's sharp. Pretty close. The only big thing I saw bouncing between these two was this kind of like white spot that's over here. So I might just make it simple on myself and get rid of that one. So moving back out, tip number 2, that was a long tip number 1. Well, that was reducing duplicates. Number 3, that's the auto advance feature. So if we're going through here and we want to start 3-starring images and going through which ones we don't want to show in our final the final preview, we hit the 3 key and it jumps into deliverable, but it'll pop out of my slideshow 5-star selections. So auto advance is great. That's the caps lock key. Turn it on, makes it super simple when you're going through that. Also, you can increase, decrease your ratings by choosing the bracket key. So keep that in mind whenever you have your attribute, flag, and 5-star turned on, because then all of our non-5-stars go away. So tip number 4 is going to be pre-building the 1-to-1s. So you absolutely want to build the 1-to-1s when you're done or when you're going through. So that's just going to be library, previews, build 1-to-1s. Of course, you can do that at import. Probably hammer on building smart previews just because they're building all the time. You're going to be constantly doing that. Smart previews might conflict with zooming in. That really becomes an issue when you don't have your originals connected and you're using just smart previews. Let me show you exactly what I mean by that, because I'm definitely an advocate for smart previews, but you have 2 images that are pretty close in their composition here, but the difference between it zooming in is 5-star, no rating. So the issue with the smart previews is you're not going to be able to zoom in as far with only a smart preview linked. So if I put this back to 1 to 2. So if I'm zooming in here, this is a smart preview, I can't get all the way in. But if I go to an original file, I can zoom in way further. So you want to keep that in mind when you're selecting. You want to have your originals connected and not just the smart previews. So it becomes very important, and you can tell if you have an original smart preview, it's going to be under here under histogram. If I go here, it's just the smart preview. So when selecting and doing one-to-one, that becomes super important, and you might be something to where you want to build smart previews on import to make things a little bit faster, but make sure the originals are selected while culling to get into those one-to-one details is super important. So let's wrap up and get through the final parts of the topic. All right, so let's wrap up culling and sorting. So there's no easy way to get through 4,000 images in 30 minutes unless you can just blast through culling and like photo mechanic, or you're just super fast and methodical in what you're keeping unselecting. So having to go through a lot of images, I mean, you're going to be shooting through a moment. You might be shooting 20 or 30 shots for the first look or for your creatives to make sure you're in focus, you're getting all those expressions and changes. So of course, the less you shoot, the less you have to go through, all that kind of stuff you know, kind of goes together. So starting out objectively, falling in love with your images. I found a lot of people are usually spending a lot of time culling because it's hard for them to let go of images. They like them all. It's easy to get rid of the soft ones, eyes closed, things like that. But when you get into the duplicates and there's a lot of good shots, how do you get, your first look images down from 10 to 15 photos of a sequence down to 5 to 7, right? All those different expressions, the approach, the expression they have when they see each other, and the emotion and all that. You can kind of move through that in 5 to 7 images. It's a moment that's happening for probably 15 to 20 seconds. You don't need 15 to 20 photos every second of that moment. So just keep that in mind. Start out objectively, and then when you want to get subjective and fall in love with the photos, make sure those are the ones that you're showing during the IPS preview. So is it sharp? Are the eyes open? Is it a flattering expression? Those are the 3 objective ways. Is it a duplicate composition? I'm kind of going through these images here. How similar are these? It's crop at the bottom. It's becoming a little more straight. Their pose is pretty much the same. I'm bouncing the camera around. I probably don't need all those shots, right? So this one's a little bit darker. This one's a little exposed a little bit better. So I'd probably undo that one. Now they're looking away. Perfect. Looking away a little bit further. Composition's changing. Looking away. Composition changes. Composition changes. Back at camera. Composition changes, breaking that kind of stuff down, wider, all that kind of stuff. So as you're, doing your tight, middle, wide, or here it's wide, wider, widest, those kind of things could become important in images that we're going to keep. So moving around, I mean, when you're, whether you're shooting through a moment or not, you want to keep the necessary images. And you really want to, select down to what your client's expecting during the slideshow, right? Having a lot of creatives, if you shot 3 or 4 hours of creatives, you're probably going to want to show all those locations, all those different shots that you were doing. So if you have one of those clients, it's like, hey, I want to get some really badass wall art. I want to get some really cool images, into the album, and some single spreads and things like that. Spend the time doing your creatives and show off those images, show off your creativity. That becomes very important. So, as you're going through these different moments and things like that, do you want to be showing the same moment for 10 minutes? And what I mean is get through the getting ready, show the details. Details are important, but you don't need to show 1,000 photos of the groom putting his tie on, his cufflinks, all that kind of stuff. Get through the details, get the changes, and move on. Things like that. So as you're going through these scenes, you want to make sure you're not spending too much time in these moments that are important, of course, but it doesn't need to be about the groom for the first 10 minutes either. So break it down. Make sure you're your primary focus is, the emotion, how they're feeling during the slideshow. That all becomes important. I broke that down, 5-star versus 3-star selections, all that kind of stuff helps. So that's it for culling and selection. So what's next? It's the editing, the fun part, right? So color correction is going to be part 4 of my workflow series, how to step up your Lightroom game. I'm not talking about tweaking every image to perfection, but balance and consistency becomes very important with color correction. So we're going to dive into presets, syncing images, all the fast ways to get consistency, to get your style applied, and things like that. Tune in next month for that.